Today is September 25th, 2020. We are in the middle of many crises, none the least of which is a horrible pandemic that is ravaging this country. And unfortunately, we have yet again a very reckless government that is hiding, secretive, and not being honest with the people, and therefore withholding the real help that the people need. So that, the political situation, we're just about to have an election, and we are also in a crisis of racism that's systemic in this country and needs to be addressed. So the world is a very crazy place right now. There was a disease that caught everybody by surprise. It was also a novel virus, and it decimated an entire community. Larry Kramer had written this play, and the name of it was Sissy's Scrapbook. So that name changed to Four Friends, but that's where Larry and Brad really became friends, and they remained lifelong friends, but it was around 1972. Larry actually was the one that gave Brad the confidence to continue as an actor. Because he did that play, the play in and of itself was not all that well received, but Brad was. And Larry said, I'm going to help you move this career along because you've got something going and you've got to really have more confidence and believe in yourself. Midnight Express, it was of course life-changing for him to do a movie like that. He was a star, a big star overnight, and completely incapable really of handling that kind of stardom. He was already starting to struggle with drugs and alcohol. And during that period of time in the late 70s and the early 80s, drugs and alcohol in Los Angeles were rampant. I really struggled. I struggled to keep us together. I struggled to keep our family together. I struggled with him not completely blowing his career. Everything was sort of crashing down around him, and I think he was too ambitious, too clever, too smart to let it all go, what he had worked so hard for. And he did go to AA, and he did get sober. Brad and I both had so many friends in the theater community. So many of our friends and colleagues were starting to get sick. The Normal Heart, it was a play that was done at the Public Theater, written by Larry Kramer, about the AIDS crisis. Larry had called Brad and said, I wrote this play, and by that point, thousands and thousands of people had died in New York. He wanted to do it for Larry, he wanted to do it for his friends, he wanted to do it for the community, and he felt that he could do it justice. He didn't stay with it as long as he wanted to because he was offered a very big job in Italy and for a lot of money, and he asked them, he said, look, my family is struggling, we just need it, and are you going to be okay? We mounted it, we got it open, it was a big hit, and I really need to take this job. And while he was in Italy in December, I got a letter from Cedars-Sinai, because he always gave blood. After Alex was born in Cedars-Sinai, he would always go there to give blood, and he had given blood just before he left, as he usually did. And I got this letter from Cedars-Sinai. Dear Mr. Davis, this is to inform you that you are HIV positive. He was in Italy, I was here, I had a 2-year-old, and I had no idea what the ramifications would be. And of course he said, no, it's not me, they made a mistake. Don't forget there's this actor named Brad David. It's probably him, it's not me. And And I sort of had to sit it out and couldn't do anything until he got home from that miniseries. He, of course, was indeed positive. Fortunately, Alex and I were not, which is still a miracle to me. Then he thought, okay, well, I feel great. I look great. So I'm just going to ride this out and live with it. We were not going to discuss it with anybody. And we set out to make very calculated decisions about how we were going to move forward and live our life. He was already living down a reputation that pretty much had wrecked his career. And he just didn't want to take any chances. And we had this little kid that was in school, and we were trying to live as normal a life as possible. I don't know, somewhere in the back of my mind, I guess I thought that maybe he's going to be the one guy that escapes. Maybe he's not sick. He doesn't feel sick. He doesn't look sick. He's not sick. He has no symptoms. So maybe we'll be one of the lucky ones. I deluded myself about that for a long time. Roger McFarlane, who was the director of Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, and also was very involved in one of the characters in The Normal Heart. Roger, who had already been dealing with many people from LA who were HIV positive, who were keeping it secret. And as he would say to us, bigger stars than your husband. Most of the people that I knew were mostly afraid of losing their jobs, not working, losing their insurance. Roger put Brad in touch with Dr. Joel Weissman. And I trusted him implicitly because he was already dealing with this with so many other actors, people in the creative arts. God bless that man, really. Because he was so much more to me and Brad than just the doctor that treated him. He got him in any trial he could get him in. AZT, DDI, DDT, whatever it was. And everything was behind closed doors, and everything was secret, and everything was in somebody else's name. He was working. He did some great work. I mean, he did The Cane Mutiny, he did The Player, he did a movie called Rosalie Goes Shopping for Percy Adlon. He worked right up until June, and he died in September. He said, I always promised my friends in New York, Roger and Larry, that if after I died, that they would know how I died, that I needed to talk about how I died. I needed not to be one of those vague code words of death. He was going to tell Hollywood that this is a huge problem. There is rampant discrimination in this town. Larry was friends with a journalist at the New York Times named Victor Sonona. Victor got on the phone, we talked, and I sent Victor the proposal that Brad had written and told him all about how that had happened, and it came out it came out to be, I thought, a very nice, honest article. The industry was shocked. Our friends were shocked. My family was shocked. Nobody knew. Nobody understood. Nobody saw how this could have happened for such a long time. The people he worked with, the people he knew, all of his friends, all of our family. Some were angry. Some were, how could you keep this from us? How could you do that? It just happened that they were honoring Joel Weissman at the fundraiser, Commitment to Life. And it happened to be 1 week after Brad died. It came up, would I want to say something? would I want to write or read a letter, and I didn't feel I could do it myself. But I did write the letter. This is the letter that I wrote, that Richard Dreyfuss read, for the honoring of Dr. Joel Weissman. And it said, "Dear Joel, even though we aren't able to be there tonight as we had hoped, we wanted you to know that our family, Brad, Alex, and I, are very much with you. We send our love, we send our respect and gratitude for your help over the past few years. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge AIDS Project Los Angeles, who, like so many other AIDS organizations across the country, has helped so many people with so few resources. We all know how great the needs are and how fast this epidemic is growing. And if it weren't for organizations like APLA and events like Commitment to Life, the tragedy of AIDS would be worse. I would also like to say that the warriors are among you. And though many have remained silent, the time has come for the veil of secrecy to be lifted. Each small step we take brings us closer to freedom. The freedom to work, the freedom to be accepted, and the freedom to be cherished with HIV and AIDS. Brad needed to come forward into the light because the last 6 years of fear and isolation cost him and our family dearly. It was his final hope that as the fight continues, and it will continue, that his death will play a small part in opening the door to a new acceptance and understanding of HIV disease and AIDS. I ask and beg you to use your power to send a message of compassion and caring to those with HIV and AIDS, no matter how they got the disease. Treat all of them with the human dignity they need and deserve. Brad did live well. He did work well. And whatever the rules are today in Hollywood, they must be changed so that people like Brad can come forward before they die. You in this room have the power to do something about AIDS. Let us celebrate our achievements tonight, and let's go to work tomorrow more determined than ever to fight discrimination in this industry and commit ourselves to making a difference. Please let Brad's death and the deaths of so many others make a difference. Let us gather next year and celebrate how far we've come. Dear Joel, congratulations tonight. You honor us all with the work that you do and the counsel that you keep. My fondest best wishes, Susan Bluestein Davis, September 14th, 1991. There were filmmakers in that room, there were producers in that room, there were heads of studios in that room, there were the people in that room that control the industry on some level. Movies that are made, people that are hired. And I mean, it's not that anybody wants to walk around with a sign saying, I'm HIV positive or I have cancer, but some allowance needed to be made if a person was healthy and looked fine to be able to work. It wasn't all the change that needed to happen, but it opened a door. It opened a door for Magic Johnson when he came out and told the truth. And whatever the speculation was, and maybe he had to leave basketball, but he didn't have to leave his life. I thought about Brad's legacy, because legacy is a funny thing, because he wasn't the biggest star, and he wasn't the most outspoken activist. And yet, he was able to be brave enough to take the industry to task and to speak his truth. And regardless of what happened, it was a risk, and he took lots of risks. He took risks in the roles that he played. He decided where and when he wanted to die and how he wanted to live. And to me, he was a hero, and to Alex. And the legacy that he really leaves is the legacy that he leaves us. The silly, silly father who made Halloween costumes and always had a tape recorder in our faces and was funny and embarrassed his friends, and the person that most people really didn't know him to be is the legacy that he leaves for us. And one brief moment when he made Hollywood listen.